I am live, and I'm hoping that everyone can hear me. I see that Miss Paula is here. I see Fairbrick Studio is here, Safina's Kitchen, and Andy Mon. If you guys are still here, thank you for coming in this morning. We are going to have sort of a story time live. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk this morning about my experience and why I retired early and how it all came about. Now, it may seem sudden that I retired the way that I did, and you can tell from the thumbnail that I retired on, I think it was a Wednesday. I believe it was a Wednesday because this may have happened on a Tuesday. And I'll get to how the story ends. But anyway, the straw that broke the camel's back happened on a Tuesday. And I believe that I resigned my position on a Wednesday. So let's get into the whole story of how that happened. Hi, Andy. Happy Friday to you too. So before I get started on my story, because it's a sad story, just to warn everybody, but what I want you to see here is the grace that I have in my life and why I am so grateful for everything that I have. Regardless of what I went through in my workplace, I have just been surrounded by grace. And that is the reason, that is the reason that everything I do is to do for other people. It's not for my own selfish gains. Because I have been blessed. I have been blessed. When you hear my story, you will say, he's been blessed. Even though it was trauma at the time that I went through it. And it really shows, it gives you guys the background of why I am so happy that I retired early. And okay, I see people in there. We're gonna work on changing your name, Zadok. We're gonna work on that. We'll work on that. So thank you for coming in this morning. And Tiger is here for Tiger on Fire. So we'll work on that. But this is a story about why I retired early. Now, other people retired early because they had enough money, they had enough stock, maybe they had a lot of stress on their job, or they traveled and they didn't want to travel anymore. And so, anyway, this is a story about me. And because my friend Julie at Happy on Monday, she talked about the different things in her job that after, I think, 15 years or something as a teacher, she had sort of worn herself down mentally, physically, all of those things. And hi, Mike, Adventure Sparks, and Brenda Huckleby. I'm sorry, I saw you there earlier. Simply Debbie Sue, I didn't get to say hi. Brenda Huckleby, I saw you earlier and I didn't say hi. So I'm sorry. Because I'm trying to stick to my story. Because I have it written here, sort of, so that I don't get sidetracked, like I've been doing for the first couple of minutes. And who was it? Coach Mean Reen said, spend the first 5 minutes just getting everybody in the chat, getting everybody settled down, and then get into what your live is about. And so I didn't consciously do that, but I did that. So let's get into this story time. And many of you out there are blessed. I'm just going to say that. You may or may not realize it. But one of the things about me is I realize how blessed I am. 1, to have a pension. 2, to have lifetime health care. Those are 2 things that are worth a ton of money. Now, you'll hear that my pension is smaller than it should be. Okay? I should have a much higher pension However, when you hear my story about why I retired early and my job, and I don't want to keep teasing this out, I want to get to the story and tell you guys my story about how and why I retired early and why I'm such a proponent of others retiring early. And before I even get into my story, because this was not in my script, but I did a video a while back about a coworker of mine, and he was very dedicated to the court. And this was the last court that I worked in that I retired from. Oh, hi, Shadow Scout. He was very dedicated. If anybody out here is a prepper, like just asking for a friend, my friend Keisha, watch Shadow Scout Swede, because he has a ton of different things and ideas about, making sure that you're safe in case of an emergency and to prepare in case a disaster happens. So I meant to tell Keisha about that, but I didn't. So anyway, let's get to my friend Andrew. Andrew wasn't even 60 years old, and he was super, super dedicated. Way more dedicated than you'll hear in my story about me being dedicated. He was way more dedicated. And he never got to retire. He passed away before he was 60. And he went to work one day because he did a lot of work. I mean, judges would call him 24/7 at home. He was always on duty. And part of that was he wanted to make himself indispensable, irreplaceable, which he was. No judge would have ever allowed him to be fired or lose his job. And judges are at the top of the food chain. Nothing happens without their say-so. So anyway, Andrew went to the doctor one day. They sent him to the hospital, and he never left. He never made it to even 60 years old. He had worked for the federal courts for well over, I think, 30 years and never got to use his pension. And that happened after I retired. But that's another reason, that's a secondary reason to my reason, that I want to see people retire early or retire as soon as you wish. Hi, Keisha. Keisha is here. Keisha, I should make you a mod. Hold on one second. I'm trying to do this. Add as a moderator. Nope, standard moderator. Okay, Keisha, you are now a mod. And so click on Shadow Scout Swede if you see him come up and comment, because I watch him every weekend and then I watch his other videos. But he is a prepper out of Sweden, and you would really like his channel because he really talks about everything of being self-reliant and self-sufficient, especially in case an emergency happens. And Tumbleweeds is not a mod. I'm sorry, I'm stopping my story time here, which I haven't even gotten into yet. But that's okay, because the story probably won't take that long. So Tiger, you're now a mod. Let me see. Rhonda, I thought you were a mod. Hold on. Uh-oh, I clicked on something here. I clicked on the wrong thing. Rhonda, I thought you were a mod. If I see you come up again, Rhonda, let me try to... I'm sorry. Sorry, everybody. I can't seem to do it, Rhonda. I keep clicking on something wrong. There we go. No, you are a moderator. Hold on. Okay, we're going back. I'm not touching anything else because I start touching stuff, and next thing you know, our live will be done. Let's get into my story. I am almost 10 minutes into the live. I've told you about my coworker who passed away early before he ever got to use his retirement. And he was the most dedicated employee you will ever want to meet. I'm telling you, without fail. He puts every employee to shame. But he was so dedicated that he never even got to use his pension. And so that's one reason. Yeah, Rhonda, you are, and Mike, I'm sorry. Mike, I tried to make you a mod, but let me see if I click on, there you go. Okay, took me a second to figure out this whole add as a moderator thing here. Brenda, I'm not sure if you want to be a mod or not. I'm just not sure. But anyway, I'm going to go through my story and we're going to get through this because what I do is when I'm uncomfortable about something, and this was traumatic when I tell you guys the story, then I dance around it and I never get to it because it's embarrassing to tell you guys my story, which is why I want to tell you guys my story. So, first of all, let's back up and we'll get right into this. Oh, okay, Brenda. 1 second. Let me see. Just wasn't sure. I'm sorry, I'm making mods here. I haven't done this in weeks and weeks and weeks. And excuse me, I'm trying to get over a cold, so you may hear me sniffling and stuff. Hi, Oki. Thank you for coming in. You came in at just the right time because I have been dancing around the topic of my toxic workplace and why I retired early. And I'm sniffling a lot because I'm trying to get over a cold. And so I'm going to get into it now because I'm 10 minutes in. And I've already talked about the one reason you should retire early, which I firmly believe in, is that some people don't even make it to Social Security age. And that's why a lot of people say they take Social Security at 62. I did not. My Social Security starts in about a week and a half, the first check, because they pay for January and February. So it started in January, but I don't get the first check until February. So anyway, let's talk about Daryl and his sad story of working. However, the overarching theme, and I wanted to say this again before I get started, in case somebody comes in during my trauma, I want you to know that I am very blessed to have made it through everything that I'm about to tell you. And I'm so grateful, right? It's not a woe is me story. It's just a story of a workplace that had a culture of keep the people down. That was the culture. Now, it's not necessarily the judges. However, judges aren't really involved in management of staff. Judges just have ultimate power, right? If a judge sneezes, the whole court catches a cold, okay? And so I just want you to sort of understand the organization. And so judges have all power. If they say anything, everybody jumps. I mean, everybody drops what they're doing and goes to see the judge and fix whatever issue that judge has. If something breaks on a judge's computer, now this is an unwritten rule in the federal courts, but you learn this almost after the day after you're hired, right? If something breaks on a judge's computer, it's not the judge's fault. I don't care what you walk in and you see. It's not the judge's fault. That's just something you never ever say. So, just so you know, judges, that's just who they are. So let's talk about my story. I was in the military in my early 20s, and I did 4 years in the Army. And the way that I came to work for the federal courts, and this was around the year 2000. I'm not positive on the exact year, but I believe it was 2000. That I was living in Vermont, and I had just started in IT. I fixed printers. I did hardware repair around computers, but I wanted to move into the software side, like networking and that kind of thing. So I passed all these exams, which made me a Microsoft certified systems engineer. Okay, 9 certification exams. And so I passed these 9 certification exams. However, every time I went to look for a job, they would say, do you have any college to go along with those certification exams? And I didn't. But I did start going to college when I was in Vermont. And I was nearly done with my associate's degree when I went to work for the federal courts. So I was close to having my associates. So let's say this is 5 years or so after I started in college, because I took a long time to get my associate's degree. So anyway, I'm working at this company in Vermont, and it's a little company, and I'm their email person and their networking person. It's my first networking job. And they hired me, and 3 months after they hired me, they laid the entire company off. Now, this was in a small town in Vermont, so whole families from this small town worked at this little company, little factory kind of company thing. And they moved all the jobs to Mexico. Well, okay, sad story number one. This was 2 weeks before Christmas. And, I had a feeling that something wasn't right. And I told the hiring manager, I said, if you guys are getting ready to lay people off, don't hire me. I'll stay at my job. Oh no, we're not going to lay people off. And they hired me, and 3 months later, they laid off the entire plant. So I'm out in the snow in Vermont looking for a job, right, at Christmas time. And so, the only job that I could find, there was one in New Hampshire, and I drove all the way to New Hampshire in the snow and ice in my four-wheel drive truck trying to get a job interview. And there was another one in Vermont in the capital city, Burlington. Burlington's not the capital. It's the big city. It's not the capital. Brattleboro, I think, is the capital. I don't know. Anyway, I messed that up. I messed up the whole capital of Vermont. Everybody from Vermont, sorry. Okay, I messed that up. Anyway, Burlington is the big city, and that's where I live near. So, at the federal court in Burlington, I got a job as just a PC desktop technician. Okay, so I got in, it paid about the same as what I was making as a network administrator at this little company. And I came in with these great ideas of here's how we can make the PCs run better. Because I'm a Microsoft certified systems engineer, right? I know my PCs and I know the software that goes on them at the time. That was a long time ago. We got much better stuff now. Thank you for message retracting something. Hi, Lisa J. I didn't see you come in. So, Lisa J., you're going to find this whole story sort of uplifting and traumatic. Because Lisa J. talks about being laid off. And I was laid off from a company in Vermont where they laid off the entire plant, shut the plant down, moved all the jobs to Mexico. I'm looking for a job, middle of December, right? I get this job beginning of January. Can you guys believe how blessed I am that I lost a job in December, had a job by the beginning of January? In Vermont, in the snow, right? Blessed. I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to keep sharing that because my story really is sad and traumatic. So I get in with the federal court in Vermont. And one of the things that I had been studying on my own at night at home was Red Hat Linux. And it was fairly new at the time. Now, Red Hat Linux is an operating system, in case you don't know. But at the time, it was free. But they were trying to figure out ways to monetize it. And so I'm at home and I'm teaching myself this software. Now, the way that you teach yourself this software is you install the operating system. When it crashes, you wipe your drive and you install the operating system again. There was no help desk. There was no nothing because it was all free. Well, I was doing this over and over and over again. So I was teaching myself Red Hat Linux by reinstalling the software every night, over and over, until I could get a little bit farther and a little bit farther and a little bit farther and have it run just a little bit. And then something would crash and I'd wipe the drive and reinstall it, make notes. So I'm self-taught, right? Well, I am the PC technician for this court in Vermont, and the courts are now adopting Red Hat Linux as the operating system for their main database in the courts. Now, this main database keeps all the court's documents. And we're talking federal court, so all of the federal court filings, whether they are criminal cases or civil cases, whatever the case may be, all of the data is in this database. And every court has their own server. So they said that they were looking to hire a Red Hat Linux server administrator. And I raised my hand and I said, I have been teaching myself Red Hat. I can do this. And what they said, see, they thought this is never going to happen, right? They said, this little guy over here, we'll put up a wall so high he can't get over it. So what they said was, they said, we'll give you 3 weeks. And here are some video cassettes. This is how old I am and how old everything was. Here are 3 video cassettes, and you have 3 weeks. If you can pass the exam on these 3 video cassettes, we'll give you the job. Well, I worked day and night, day and night, day and night in 3 weeks. Because I had practiced at home so much, and I had the server running at home, I passed the exam in 3 weeks. They were shocked. They were blown away. But they had promised me the job. So they gave me the job. One of the other things that happened at this first court that I went to was that I was going to college when I joined the court. I was almost done with my bachelor's degree. And part of the hiring process was they said they had tuition assistance. Well, I called them on it and I said, you guys said that you had tuition assistance. I'm going to college. I'd like to be reimbursed for last semester. Again, they were shocked. They had never written a policy for tuition assistance because no one had ever requested tuition assistance. So they had to quickly write a policy to pay me. Then the very next semester, they rewrote the policy that said we no longer pay for actual tuition unless you're going to college related to your specific court position, which there was no college for my specific court position. See, so they effectively eliminated my tuition assistance. This is my very first court. We're going to get to my last court very quickly because I want to get through this story. Please, everybody type fire in the chat so that you share out your channels. And I'm trying to look over here. Oh, Miss Do It Yourself is here. Let me see. Well, I would make you a mod, but I can't see you right now in the chat. But we'll get there. Hopefully I'll not mess this up. Oh, Real Odds and Evens. Thank you for coming. Have to talk about his channel real quick. But anyway, let me get back to the story. I keep sidetracking. So my first court, this is my first federal court. And I am the PC desk technician, but now I've moved up to being a server administrator and a database administrator because not only do I do the operating system, which is Red Hat Linux, but also I have to learn the database, which was, I'll say this name, nobody may know it, but it was called an Informix database, was a company. And this story comes into play later in the type of database it was. But what I will say is, just for simplicity reasons, it was not a main database. It was good at the time, but it was not Oracle. Oracle is a more well-known database. We'll just say that. So, and Oracle was used throughout the rest of the federal government, right? So let's have another little civics lesson here. The federal courts is less than 2.5% of the whole federal government. Most of it is the executive branch. So I was in a very small portion of the federal government, a very small 1/3 of the federal government. Okay, we'll get back to my story. I'm in the federal court. They take away my tuition assistance. They give me a job that they never expected me to be able to get. So everybody is looking at me like, how? How did this guy get this job? So I asked for a raise because I see what other server administrators are making around the country, right? Now, when you're in federal service, depending on your location and the cost of living where you live, there are different pay scales, like they add to the base pay based on where you live and your cost of living in that area. So everybody might be the same pay grade, but depending on where they live, they get a little bump up because of cost of living. Vermont, a little bit expensive, but the pay is not. So I asked my boss for a raise, the head of my office. I asked him for a raise. And he says he can't give me the raise. Because what he says was, we can't have the tail wagging the dog. And I was a young guy, but at my level, I was thinking, or where I was in life, I needed more money, right? I was making $40,000 a year at this court. And so I said, I need more money, right? Because my goal always was to get to six figures, right? So how do I get from 40,000 up to six figures? So he says, we can't have the tail wagging the dog. Well, I was insulted. Okay, I shouldn't have been, but I was. And what I thought was, wait a minute. I'm the dog, you're the tail. I'm trying to move up in my career. That's why I'm trying to get a promotion, which they didn't pay me much more than my regular job to get this server administration job. So I've got this job, and what I found is, in order in the federal courts for you to get promoted, you have to move courts. If you stay in the same court, many people in the federal courts do the same job for 30 years and retire. They never get promoted. They never do anything different. They do the same job for 30 years. And I just said, I do not want to be sitting here and be a server administrator for the next 30 years and just get the little 2%, 3% pay raises. Didn't want to do it. So in the federal courts, what you do in order to get promoted is you have to move courts. So you'll never get promoted in the court that you're in. Okay, that's just the way it is. So what did I do? I found a job at another federal court, server administrator, right? Because Linux was just catching on in all the federal courts and it was getting big. So I get a job in Miami, and I move from Vermont to Miami. Now, I don't have the money to move, so I pull money out of my retirement, bad move, okay, bad financial move, to make this move to Miami. But my thought was I'll pay back the loan from my retirement, and then I'll have a much higher pay raise. So I moved to Miami, pay the money back. Miami is a whole different can of worms than Vermont, right? Vermont totally stifled my creativity. What they said was, you will do everything within this box and you will not think outside this box. And I had like all this creativity in me. Well, I moved to Miami and it's a whole nother set of issues. I don't speak Spanish, and unless you speak Spanish and English, in Miami, you can't get another job. So basically, what I found when I got to Miami was that if I ever lost that job with the federal courts in Miami, I couldn't get another job down there because I didn't speak Spanish. And you really needed to be bilingual in Miami. You just did. Even though the federal courts was English, quite a few of the people at the federal court were bilingual. So I was looking at that. I was in Miami for about a year and a half, right? Now, I'm still going to... Oh, I'm back. Oh, thank goodness. I buffered for a second, I froze, and now I'm back. So we did not lose the live. Boy, I am so sorry. Okay, we're gonna keep going because I froze for a second, now I'm back. Let's get through the story. I'm in Miami for a year and a half. And I realized that I'm very vulnerable in Miami. And there are other things that I don't want to get into at the court in Miami that did not sit well with me. And I really do not want to talk about the whole Miami court experience. Let's get to my next court. So I moved from the court in Miami back up to Washington, D.C. Now, I moved from a regular district court, which is, trials and that kind of thing. I moved up to the appellate court, where all they do are hear, there are 3 judge panels, and they hear cases that have already been heard. Or they hear special things like from the president, that kind of thing. But it's not a trial court. I'm no longer in a trial court, right? I'm in the Court of Appeals. Once your case has gone through the court, if you think that there's been some technical error or legal error, you can appeal. And that's the court I went up to. And that's a higher level court. And that's where I retired from, was the Court of Appeals. So, also the Court of Appeals, just so you know, real quick side note, is the stepping stone to the Supreme Court of the United States. So a few judges from my court in DC are now Supreme Court justices. So, just so you know, like the head of the Supreme Court came from my court. So, just so you know, Chief Justice Roberts came from my court. So, anyway, very prestigious, a very prestigious court. So, I moved to this court as their server administrator, database administrator. From the very first month I was there, they didn't like me. The people, whoever were in charge, it wasn't necessarily my boss, although he grew not to like me, and he sort of joined in on everybody piling up on me. But different people in the court that had some influence didn't like me. And so they were trying to get rid of me since I got there. Now, I was at that court for 13 years with people trying to get rid of me. But I'm thinking, I need this job. I have a condo in the DC area. Oh, we're back. We're going to keep buffering and pausing, and I'm just going to keep going with this thing. We are going to go for it because it's pausing and buffering. So I can't lose my job. I have a condo in the DC area. I have a duplex in Vermont. I can't afford to lose my job. And because I'm getting promoted from court to court, I'm getting closer to the 6 figures, which is what I wanted. So this court is trying to get rid of me. They are doing whatever they can. So this is where all the trauma comes in that they would give me, we were doing like this migration of servers. And that's one reason they hired me, was they were moving from an old database to their new Linux database system server. And I had the expertise. So they hired me for the migration. So we're going through this migration. Now it's me and a coworker, and he is the face of the court. This guy cannot do anything wrong. I don't care. The whole 13 years I was there, he did little, but he never got in trouble. I don't care what. So what they would do in order to try to get rid of me is, and this is at the beginning of my time there, because it gets worse. But at the beginning, they would give me a pile of paperwork on a Friday and say, all of this needs to be tested out on the system by Monday morning. Otherwise, you're going to hold up the migration of the court. And if you hold up the migration of this server from the old server to the new server, we got to get rid of you. So Friday, 4:30, I'm handed this whole pile of testing that needs to be done on my server, and it's supposed to be done by Monday morning. Well, I go home and I work all weekend. I stay up all night and I work all weekend to get that testing done. I'm logging in remotely to my server from home, and I get the testing done by Monday morning. And I show up Monday morning and I've got my part done. My coworker, who also had a pile of paperwork, right, to do, he's the face of the court, doesn't have any of his stuff done. Because at 4:30 on Friday, he went home. And so we show up at the meeting and he says, I didn't get to it. Maybe I'll get to it this week. Everybody says, oh, okay, all right. But for me, they said, Daryl, if you don't have this paperwork done, we're going to have to get rid of you. They kept doing that to me. They kept doing it, and I kept getting the work done. They were hot. They were hot. And my coworker, who was the face of the court, he never had his stuff done on time, ever. For years and years and years, never. And he never got in trouble. So this was the environment that I was working with. And I withstood this for 13 years. We get the migration done, and the lady that kept trying to sandbag me retired. So I thought, okay, I'm good. I'm in the clear. Nope. They were still trying to get rid of me after that. So what they did was, not only did I have my job. Hi, Julie. Thank you for being here. Julie, I'm blessed to have survived. Okay, it was very traumatic. I'm blessed to have survived. So, and I feel grateful. I want everybody to know how grateful I am to be retired with a pension. So what they did after that was there was a government downsizing across the executive branch, right? And remember, the judicial branch is a different branch of government. They don't have to follow the rules of the executive branch. But because they were downsizing the federal government, my court said, we're going to follow them. And so they got rid of some of the people they didn't like. But me, it was hard to get rid of because there were only 13 people in the whole country that did what I did. At the appellate level, there's only 13 appellate courts across our country. So only 13 people, hard to replace me. However, what they did was they said, Daryl, we are going to demote you to save money because of this government downsizing and budget cuts and savings. So we are going to reduce your pay by 25 to 30%. See, they're still trying to get rid of me. They're hoping I will quit. A lot of people told me, hey, this is, some kind, they told me to file a lawsuit, right? A discrimination lawsuit. They said, you should go to court because this is totally, wrong for them to do this. Well, I don't have money to go to court, and I got a condo, I got a duplex in Vermont. I got bills, okay? I got bills. So what they do is a lot of people lost their jobs, but for me, what they said was, we're going to demote you. And because we're giving you such a large pay decrease with your demotion down 2 levels, right? Now, this is actually at the time that I had my master's degree and I was applying for assistant manager positions at other courts. See, so I was trying to get out of there. I was trying to move to a different court and get promoted again. Well, my bosses knew that because they had to allow me to use their video conferencing software to do these job interviews. They demoted me enough where I could not apply for a job 2 pay grades above where I was. That's why they demoted me so low. They also said, because we're taking away so much of your money, we're not going to do it in 1 year. We're going to do it over the course of 3 years. So for 3 years, I went to work and made less money each year. This is the embarrassing part that I don't want to tell anybody. So for 3 years, I made less money until I was the lowest paid person in the IT department with the highest education. So when they demoted me, I started going for my PhD because I saw my PhD as the only way for me to get out of there. I didn't realize I'll get a PhD and I'll start teaching in colleges and it will give me that income back that they took away. So what happened was I have 2 master's degrees I get demoted. And what they're trying to show me is your education doesn't matter. My boss didn't have, I think maybe he had a bachelor's degree, and maybe the head of my organization, like let's say she was the CEO of my office, I think she had a bachelor's degree. So they were trying to show me that my master's degrees didn't matter. Also, they were trying to get me to quit after all these years. They just kept trying to get me to quit. And so that was not enough. I would not quit. I wanted that pension, which I was only 7 to 10 years away from my pension. So I said, I've got to stick this out to get the pension. They want me to lose my pension. That's what they want. So I stayed, even with the pay deductions. That wasn't enough for them. What they did after that was they gave me other people's jobs. So we had a help desk person. They treated her so poorly that she quit, joined the military, and became an officer in the military. So she got a much better job as opposed to being treated horribly as a help desk person. Well, when she left, they gave me all of her duties. Now, this is in addition to my server administrator, database administrator position with much lower pay. I now have to also do the help desk person's jobs. Like they had given her 3 jobs that nobody else in my department wanted to do. They gave me those 3 jobs on top of the job that I already had. They wanted me to quit again. Okay? So now I'm doing the job of 3 people. And I won't quit. I will not quit because I want that pension. Let's say 5 years away from the pension. And so I managed to do 3 people's jobs for those 5 years. And it was the job that nobody else in the ID department would do. So I was treated horribly for 5 to 7 years, if not 10 years. But my goal was bigger than them. My goal was the pension. And so I stayed on that job, and what would happen is we would do our annual reviews every year in October. And some years they would leave me alone. Other years they would nitpick at me and find different things that they could say, oh, well, you need to do this and you need to do that to get better. So some years I was okay during the annual review. Well, this last year, before I quit, it was October and we had my annual review. The weekend before I was supposed to go in for my annual review, something happened nationally with my database, but it was across the whole federal courts nationally. It wasn't anything on my server that I could have done anything about, but it was on a weekend. Well, I had long since stopped working 24/7 for the courts. Because they had demoted me and cut my pay, I no longer was on 24/7 call as far as I was concerned. As far as they were concerned, I should always be on 24/7 call. I should be reading emails all weekend. I should have my cell phone, my court cell phone with me at all times. Now, I did have my cell phone with me, but I no longer checked emails on weekends because I'm working on my PhD. So I am focused on my education on my time off. And I'm focused on my education on my lunch hour. So the court was now secondary to my education. Just so you know, I'm just being honest about this. And so I had to have another focus to keep me going. You know, because my life was being treated so poorly by my coworkers who were sandbagging me every chance they got, by my bosses that were looking for anything they could do to pin on me. Short little story. One of my coworkers, who's a friend of mine, she came to me and she said, "Daryl, you won't believe what I just heard in a meeting." Something went wrong in my court, and they were looking for how they could explain this to the judges of what went wrong in the IT department. And what this one coworker said, let's blame it on Daryl. It had nothing to do with my system, nothing. But yet one of my coworkers knew that I was the most hated person in my department and said, let's just blame it on Daryl. These are the coworkers that I worked with. I couldn't trust anyone because I did not know who was going to sabotage me. So it was a very lonely existence every day when I went to work. I was constantly watching my back. I was constantly dodging bullets for years and years and years. So this final year, in October, I go for my annual review, and something happened nationally that I didn't know about until I came in Monday morning. And all my coworkers had called each other over the weekend, but nobody called me, of course. So I go in, and they're like, Daryl, did you hear about this national outage that happened over the weekend? I was like, no. Oh, well, you should have known, and you should have been watching your emails, and so now we're going to have to figure out why you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing on your time off. I was in all kinds of hot water because I was not watching my emails all weekend. And this is that whole culture of an organization giving you a laptop, giving you an iPad, giving you a cell phone, and expecting you to be on call 24/7. And I had stopped doing that quite a while back. So that was the first time I got in trouble. So I said, okay, I tell you what, I will fix my emails so that an alert pops up if something national happens and I need to be alerted. They said, okay, right? One of my coworkers sabotaged me by burying something 5 emails deep, saying that I needed to be somewhere to do a job on one of my extra jobs, right? One of my extra jobs was getting rid of old IT equipment. And I could not make a mistake on serial numbers. I had to inventory tons of equipment every year when we replaced PCs. So that took up a ton of my time. That was one of my extra jobs that they gave me that nobody wanted. I got really good at that. Then another job was when judges got new carpet or new paint in their chambers, all the PCs had to come out off of everybody's desk, the judge, the law clerks, their secretary, everybody's desk. All the PCs had to come off their desks, be stored. And then by the time they came in on Monday morning, all those PCs had to be exactly back, exact spot where they were, and be ready for the court to start business on Monday morning. So I had to stay late on Friday evening because judges and their staff can work as late as they want, and you're just sort of after whenever they finish. That's when you can take away their PC. You can't tell them, hey, I got to go home. No. So I had to stay late on Friday nights, and then I had to come in at 3 or 4 o'clock on Monday morning and get all these PCs put back on these desks and have them in perfect working order. And I mean in the exact spot where the mouse was sitting when I left. On Monday morning, by 7 a.m., when the judge came into his office or his law clerk came in, right? So these were my jobs. In addition to being a server administrator. And I did them all. So when I got sabotaged this last time by another coworker, it had to do with me moving PCs off of judges' desks and that kind of thing. And I could not believe that a coworker would do this to me. It was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Well, I had just gotten in trouble for not seeing emails of this national power outage thing. Well, now I get in trouble again a week later for not seeing the email that this coworker had buried so deep in the email chain, I was never going to see it. about me doing something about moving PCs off of desks because of carpeting or painting or something. Now my bosses come to me and they're looking, they're spitting fire because any itty bitty mistake I made, they came to me with guns blazing. And so again, my boss's boss, the head of the organization, who's been trying to get rid of me, I mean, her whole time that she's had her job, she comes to me and she says, Daryl, I know you said you were going to fix your emails, but I don't think that's enough. I don't think it's enough. And I saw the writing on the wall. She's finally got enough evidence to get rid of me. Well, and here's where blessings, blessings, blessings. I just happen to be of the age that I finally have met my retirement age. However, I was still early. I was a year and a half before I was full retirement age, but I had the years, I had all this stuff. So I went home and I looked at my finances. And I said, I think I have enough money coming in from my side hustle that I can retire. Because I had now gotten my PhD, I was now teaching in colleges, and my side hustle from teaching in colleges had equaled what they had taken my federal government pay down to. See? So the colleges didn't have to come up too high to meet this low pay that I had at the federal government. But anyway, I looked at my pay that night and I said, Daryl, it's time to go. It's time to quit. And so I came in the next day, which you guys see on my thumbnail, and I put in my retirement request. Now, I met a friend from a whole nother federal government agency that next day, and he said no. He said, don't retire. He said, you'll lose 20% of your pension if you retire immediately. What he said was, go back, tell them that you resign and you're taking delayed retirement. I had never heard of delayed retirement. Nobody in my HR told me about delayed retirement. A friend of mine from another federal agency told me the deal. So I went back in, as you see in my thumbnail, and I said, no, I rescind my retirement request. I am taking delayed retirement. Blessing and grace. I just happen to be inside of the 18-month window. You can only do this within 18 months of turning 60 years old. And this just happened to be just within that 18 months. So I took this delayed retirement. I paid my portion of health care plus the federal government's portion of health care for a year and a half. And you pay it to the National Science Foundation. Who knows how that happens? But that was the rules. So I did that, and then I got my pension at 60, even though I quit the job at 58 and a half. But I did not lose that 20% of my pension. See, it was a blessing that I ran into this friend that next day. I have had so many blessings over the years. Getting this federal government job, from looking for a job in the snow in Vermont, grace, just a blessing. Surviving for 13 years in this court that was trying to get rid of me, only to get my pension and retire early, a blessing. So yes, my pension is smaller because when they demoted me, that was less money going into my retirement. And it was a lot less money to calculate my final high 3 years. Another blessing. My high 3 years happened before they demoted me. See, they demoted me after I was already at the court 3 years, and I had just barely hit 6 figures. However, it would have been a lot higher had I stayed at that pay grade for the next 10 years. So I lost 10 years of really high pay growth, which would have made my pension a lot higher. And that's why I always tell everybody, I have a tiny pension, and I don't care, because it's a pension. And I'm working and squeezing that tiny pension for every penny that it can give me. I have learned to live on that tiny pension. And so that's why I'm in the FIRE movement, is because these people forced me to live on less by demoting me. And I have been living on less ever since. See, they forced me into the FIRE movement. And they allowed me to retire early with a pension and with teaching income that equaled my federal government income. So I actually got a pay raise when I quit. See? And so not only did I have real estate from my duplex up in Vermont, and then I bought other real estate because I bought a house and then rented out my condo in the DC area. So then I had my duplex and my condo as 2 rentals. And then I started accumulating more rentals. So the federal government's pay was a very small part of my income streams. So now you guys have all heard why I retired early, because I had just had the straw that broke the camel's back. When that one coworker tried to sandbag me by burying that message about moving equipment off of people's desks so far in email that it got me in trouble again with my boss. And I finally said, Daryl, you're 58. Do you really want to be crawling under judges' desks and their law clerks' desks, moving PCs? It was heavy stuff. There were these PC lifters to so that they could standing desks. There were standing desks. Those things were heavy. I wasn't supposed to have to move standing desks, but nobody else was there. And so I had to move them. Because my job was get this job done and get this equipment put back up by Monday morning. And so you guys see the trauma that I went through, always being on guard, always being tense every day when I went to work, saying, is this going to be the day that they find a reason to fire me? So it was very stressful. And I could not trust a single coworker with any information about me at all, because it could have been used to bury me. So it was very lonely. That's my point. And I have taken up almost a whole hour with this story. But when Julie told her story about how schools changed and how students changed and different things, I wanted to tell you guys my story. You know, I just one day looked at my income and said, I have multiple streams of income. I can afford to quit. And only by grace did I run into another federal employee that told me how to keep all of my pension, how to keep my health care, and get it all a year and a half later. So all in all, I think I spent about $8,000 on health care for a year and a half, paying my portion plus the federal government's portion. But when I turned 60, the federal government's portion, they kicked back in. I have had health care ever since at a very low rate. I have an HSA with the federal government, which I did not know I could get until I retired, until I turned 60 and started looking at the various healthcare plans and watching YouTube. I learned about HSAs. And I found out that I could sign up as a associate postal employee. So I am an associate of the postal department for my health care. And I have a high deductible health care plan. And I have been investing my HSA money ever since I was 60. So I want you guys to see how blessed I am to be sitting here today with a pension, and how it didn't have to be. How blessed I am that I went on and got my PhD amongst all that stuff, which gave me another income stream. I am so blessed. I don't care how tiny that pension is, because again, Social Security is much bigger than the tiny pension that the federal government gives me. But now I have 2 base streams of income. that will come in every month, which is way more than what I normally spend. So I am now coast fire, I guess you could say, or barista fire, whatever you want to call it. But my rental income on top of my pension, my Social Security, and my teaching income. So I have more income streams than the amount of money that I'm spending. Now, the rental income variable. Last month it was good. This month, not going to be good. I already know. I've got a tenant moved out and they had to redo the house. So that costs a bunch of money every time a tenant moves out and you have to turn and paint walls and do floors or whatever you need to do. But do you know my property management company, the person moved out in like the beginning of January, they've already got that place turned and rented. My property management company, All Stars. And because I have property management company, I can travel. I'm not getting the phone calls from my real estate. They handle the phone calls, they call the plumbers, I just pay the bills. But some months are good, some months are bad. But I can rely on pension and Social Security. Teaching income, up and down, right? February, March, and April are going to be very good months because I've got a lot of classes going on. So I'm going to use that money to pay down debt that I've accumulated. But my point is, I want you guys to know the stress that I was under and why just one day I was financially free and I quit my job. So I did not plan for early retirement. Early retirement was thrust upon me, but I was financially ready for early retirement. For 3 years before I quit that one day, I had been maxing out my retirement accounts. I had been practicing not living on that federal government income. I had been practicing living on my teaching income because I never knew when they were going to fire me. And that's a sad way to live, is thinking to yourself, I better live on something else because I never know one day, one Monday, I'm going to walk in. And that's why I love Julie's channel, Happy on Monday. I am the happiest guy on a Monday that you're ever going to meet. I am. Because I never knew if I went in there on Monday, if something happened over the weekend that nobody told me about, and I was going to walk into a buzzsaw on Monday morning. And that might be the Monday morning they fire me. So I had to always have a contingency backup plan. And that's no way to live. That's just no way to live. So I've gone over my 60 minutes. And so, but this was a story time. You know, I wanted everybody to know why I am so grateful. I'm grateful that I survived and got to the pension because that was my goal. I could care less everything they did to me and talked about me. I could care less because my goal was get the pension. They did not want me to have that pension. They did everything they could to get me to quit. And by all rights, anybody else, normally a person would have quit. They would have filed a discrimination lawsuit so fast. You know, yeah, everybody else would have done that. That wasn't me. That's not me. I don't have lawyers and I don't have money for lawyers and I'm not trying to lose my job. I got payments. I got car payments. I got motorcycle payments. I've got condo payments. I don't have time to be sitting up in court talking about, oh, they did me wrong. I just refocused my energy into the things that I could do. They buried me. They buried my career. They made it so I could never apply to leave their court and go to another court. They made sure I was never, ever going to leave. And that was their goal. You know, no court wants an employee leaving. As I mentioned in the beginning, most people in the federal courts, as far as staff goes, once you're management, and there's very few management, but once you're management, depending on who you know, right, then you could move up. But court staff, not non-management, we never ever move up. We do the same job for 30 years, sitting at the same desk or in the same cubicle for 30 years and retire. And I just didn't want that. I just wanted to move up in life. And that goes against the culture of the federal courts. So I was bucking the culture. And I didn't realize I had put myself in a bad spot and looked bad to them, but I did. And so I had to suffer those consequences. So anyway, that's my story. I am so grateful that I went through all of that trauma because I get to live the life that I'm living today. See, and I get to be grateful for the little bit that I have. And so that's what I want to impart to everybody, is that I was taught as a child to be grateful for the little bit. I grew up poor. I didn't have a lot of money. I grew up being taught to be grateful for what you have. Yeah, your shoes are not new, but there's somebody out there who has no shoes. See, so always, please, everybody, be grateful for whatever you have and just work with whatever finances you have. I learned to eat oatmeal. I took salad to work. I did whatever I could do to survive them cutting my pay. That's what I learned. You all know when I was coming out of that homeless shelter that I had to fish for food. I am a survivor. I know how to survive anything. You can take away all my money. I'm going to survive. But I'm grateful that they taught me how to live on less. And today I live on less, and I can travel and go to Maui and do those different things. So coming up shortly, here's a teaser. Coming up shortly is the luau. I'm going to do a video from the luau that we went to in Maui. So that's my next one. We did whale watching. Next, we're going to go to a luau this week. So I want to thank everybody for watching. I can't believe there's 18 people in here. I cannot believe this. But I wanted you guys to hear my truth and not how I sort of dance around it because it's embarrassing. Yes, it's embarrassing. They had me crawling around on the floor and, staying late and coming in. Yeah, it's all embarrassing. However, it's what I had to do to get to where I am today. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world where I am today. So when you guys see where I'm at today, I want you to know the struggle that it took for me to get here. See, now the tears are coming. I knew that this was going to be traumatic. But I want you to see the struggle, that you don't get financially free just because, right? My life has not been a straight line of everything is rainbows and unicorns. Hasn't been. I did the best I could do at the time, which was dodge the bullets and do the best to not get fired. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I have went way over my time, and I want to thank everybody that was here. I am going to copy this chat because I want to go back and read the comments because I've been trying to look at the screen and I haven't been reading the comments. But, well, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Paula. It's not your typical story of I was great and I got promoted and I became the senior vice president of the organization. No, that's not my story. My story is, I went against the system and the system tried to break me. And I wasn't going down because I had a goal, and they did everything they could. They threw the kitchen sink at me. And that's okay because we're here today. That's okay because we're here today. And I can't tell you some of the dark thoughts that went through my head when they demoted me. It was such an embarrassing thing to my ego. I had just touched 6 figures when they said, we're taking you down. I had just barely made that goal of my life, was to make six figures. So I'm a guy who retired early with less than six figures of income, $300,000 in my retirement account, because that's all I had on the day that I said, I'm out. I'm out of here. And I had to make that work. And if you just watch my other video, I know I'm going over. If you just watch my other video, just this past week, I showed that I have 135,000 or maybe 139,000 in my retirement accounts. So I went down from the 300,000 that I had when I retired. I took some of the money out and I put it on my house here in South Alabama. Other parts of my retirement account, I took it out and I invested it as loans in real estate and lost all that money. Gone. The economy went against me. I don't blame the operators, but the interest rates went against me in my loans. And I don't think I'll ever see that money again. So I'm rebuilding my retirement account again through the colleges now, because they allow me to put money in. So my goal now is build up the Roth side of the retirement accounts, because the colleges didn't have Roth options 5 years ago. They just recently, in the last couple of years, instituted Roth accounts in their retirement accounts. So because I have, and I'm going to tell you this, then I'm going to end. Because I have a 457 retirement account at one school and a 403b retirement account at another school, the IRS considers those two different types of retirement accounts. Therefore, because I'm over 59 and a half, I believe, I can put up to $30,000 a year. Maybe I think it's 33,000 now, but over $30,000 a year in each of those two retirement accounts. Now, I don't make that much from each college each year, but I can put 100% of my income into retirement accounts without any limitations. That's my new goal. If I do it in 2026, fine, but I don't think I will. In 2027, I'm going to try again. 100% of my teaching income into retirement accounts. So now you guys know why I have these goals, and just how blessed I am. I can't say that enough. You know, if you had to dodge bullets for 13 years and try not to get fired, you're blessed to have survived. So I'm blessed. I know that I'm here by grace. I know that I'm here by grace, and that's why everything from my channel, when I get monetized, will go to the homeless, because I have enough. I don't need your money. I don't want anybody memberships and super chats. I don't need your money. I live on less than what I make. So I don't need anybody's money. But what I do want is I want to donate from the advertisers and transfer that money to the homeless. And I'm always going to have that goal on YouTube. So I will be supporting all of you, especially Mrs. G. I've got you on my alarm in my phone for when you go live. So yeah, I'm just going to keep going, you know. And somebody was saying, don't beg for watch hours, right? And so I'm not going to beg for watch hours. But what I am going to say is I looked at the watch hours under the Earn tab. I'm just learning this whole analytics thing. And I don't have a ton of watch hours, which is okay. I don't care. Okay. I'm going to keep doing my Friday live. I'm going to keep putting out my other video a week. And that's it. That's it. I'm retired. I'm okay. So I appreciate everybody who came through to listen to my long, sad story about how blessed I am. And I went way over my time. I'm 14 minutes over. So I'll go 15 minutes over. And, oh, hi to Fam Adventures. Thank you for coming in. Boy, I appreciate everybody, anybody that shows up here, because y'all know when I first started doing these lives, it was just me and two other people. And they said, Daryl, just keep talking. Just keep talking. So I will keep doing a Friday live, whether anybody shows up or not. So I want to thank everybody for being here and for letting me go over my hour. We'll try not to do that again in the future. Thank you all. I'm going out to support people for the rest of the day while I'm grading students, which is what I do every day. I grade students and watch YouTube, grade students and watch YouTube. And where you guys see me sitting is exactly where I'm sitting every single day. This is it. This is my life, unless I'm traveling on vacation. So thank you all so much. And as I travel around the country later in the year, I'm going to take you all with me, but I won't be missing my Fridays. Thank you all. Andy Mon, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the next battle. I have been missing it, but I'm really looking forward to the next battle. Easy Street with Jen, thank you for coming. I just saw you. I'm sorry I didn't see you a little bit earlier. But I've been looking at the camera and not looking at the chat, so I don't know who all came in. And so I'm gonna make more mods. Okay, there's our goal. Next time I go live, is to make more people moderators. We'll keep this a safe place. Simply Debbie Sue, you should have been a moderator. I don't know how Simply Debbie Sue was not a moderator. Mrs. G, you should have been a moderator. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm making moderators and keeping the live going longer, which equates to more watch hours, right? So those folks that do a 2-hour live or a 3-hour live, or they go live for 5 times a day, that's not me. I'm barely enough to get on here without crying after 1 hour. So you definitely don't want me on here talking for 3 hours. So no, I'm retired. We're going to go back to being a retired person, and I'll support you and watch your stuff. And Shadow Scout Sweet, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much, and I'll see you over the weekend, because you know me. I'm in your live every weekend. So thank you all so much, and you've heard my story now, and just be blessed. Just realize how blessed and fortunate you are, because you really are. I mean, my coworker who passed away before he ever even got to use his pension, and I'm telling you, he had a ton. He was probably one of those 401k millionaires, because of the way that he saved money and paid off debt. He never got to experience any of it. So make as much money as you can on YouTube. Do whatever you can to get your side hustles and multiple streams of income going. Retire early and enjoy life when you're young enough to have your health to enjoy life. That's my message. I'm sticking to it. And in 2026 and 2027, you're going to see me actually living that. You're going to see me enjoying life. So thank you all so much. Now I'm going to say goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.